M4 MacBook Pro versus the M5 MacBook Pro. I tried to make the M5 one bigger because it's, more powerful. The SSD is twice as fast on the new M5, 3,000 something megabytes per second versus literally 6,000 something megabytes per second. That's a doubling. And a doubling is unusual in one generation. A lot of the upgrades, most of the upgrades from M4 to M5 are just like spec bump, incremental, what you'd expect from 1 year of chip innovation. And I'm comfortable saying, with the majority of people, if I set you down with either one of these for just a regular work day, most people wouldn't know which one is the new one. They do look and feel identical. They have exactly the same body. Same ports, keyboard, screen, speakers. And since the M4 was already overpowered for almost every regular, work from home office person, when you're using these computers, the experience is the same most of the time. But there are a couple of things that came out with this new laptop that are over double the spec. SSD read and write speed being one of them. The other is this strange 300% boost in AI-related GPU actions. It's looking to me like something about this new GPU is custom designed for on-device AI stuff. I've got a hunch that Apple's cooking up their answer to ChatGPT, and something tells me it's gonna run locally. If I was a betting man. Now, the true test is whether or not these enhancements are gonna be meaningful to you at all. Let's just say Apple had a breakthrough and the Wi-Fi download speed on this thing was a maximum of 10 terabytes per second. It's not. That would be an alien spec, a decade ahead of its time. But if your house and the place you work only have Wi-Fi 6E, that insane spec would offer quite literally nothing to you personally. I'm not gonna say this very fast SSD is exactly like that, but this crazy new AI performance might be if you're my mom and all you use your computer for is emailing your pottery class and writing newsletters for your dance crews. Hi, Mom. Back to that SSD speed. Double the speed, that's nuts. One of the immediate things that comes to mind is file transfers. Of course, that's going to actually quite literally be almost twice as fast. Well, as long as whatever you're transferring files to or from also has this kind of drive and is connected with Thunderbolt. Because if you're just backing up files to your NAS over the network, nope. You can only push out files as fast as they can be taken in, obviously. So most of the time, your external drive's speed, or whichever cord you're using to connect it with, is gonna be the limiting factor. And that even goes for the slower M4 SSDs. My fastest SD cards, these SDXC2 V90 cards, they can still only move files at 300 megabytes per second, 1/10 of this thing's max speed. This SanDisk Extreme, 900 megabytes per second. This thing, 150 megabytes per second, ew. These write at a whopping 62 kilobytes per second. Even this very attractive Asus ROG Strix NVMe external drive is stuck at USB 3.2 Gen 2 speeds of about 1,000 megabytes per second, aka 10 gigabits per second. So for all of these drives, these two computers will transfer files to and from them at equal speed because you're limited by the drive. Luckily, this does exist though, a Thunderbolt 5 external drive. I have a Samsung 990 Pro in here that's even faster than the new M5's SSD. I think these can read and write at like 7,700 megabytes per second. So check this out. I'm copying the test folder we're gonna use later for the Lightroom test. It's 43 gigabytes of raw images. That's 1,200 pictures taken from my big camera. And it'll copy over to my M4 MacBook in about 15 seconds. That's already mind-bogglingly fast. But moving over to the M5 MacBook Pro, it'll move this same folder of files. And I want you to take a second to appreciate this. This is 43 gigabytes of files. So 43 billion bytes of data. If you tried to count to 43 billion out loud, it would take something like 1,000 years. This takes 10 seconds. Inside 10 seconds for 43 gigs of transfer. So that does mean things like much faster time machine backups if you're going to a Thunderbolt drive. And it means overall faster file transfers. Although, come on, 43 gigabytes in 15 seconds is already what the f territory when it comes to transfer speed anyway. Another thing very fast SSD speeds translates to is things loading faster. With the new M5, you can really just turn it off every time you're not using it, because this computer goes from off to ready to use in 15 seconds now. Although this one only takes about 18 seconds because a super fast SSD is still going to be limited to how much data the CPU can take in and do something with. This can't parse through 6 gigabytes per second, even if it technically has access to it. So yes, everything will load faster on the new Mac. It's just that everything already loaded so fast that going from 4 seconds to 3 seconds to turn Photoshop on isn't really going to change your workflow. There are a few things things that need to load a lot of data really fast, and you'll remember how I said all roads seem to be pointing towards on-device AI. They call it edge computing. LM Studio is this program that loads ChatGPT type large language models locally on your computer. So you can use it with no internet. Everything's happening inside here, no data centers. And some of those models are very large, like 20 gigabytes. So every time you start it up, it has to load that 20 gigabyte model, so a slower SSD will take longer to do that. The M5's ready to use a lot faster. And putting my conspiracy theory hat back on, I'm betting Apple's gonna have a smaller model. Or should I say, I bet they have a smaller model that will just load and unload anytime you need something from it. This extra fast SSD will make that happen close to immediately. If they use something more like the Quen model, this is only a 3 gigabyte model, and it fits very nicely inside 16 gigs of RAM, so this thing could load and unload in like a half a second to answer a question more like a person than like a Siri. This is what they're up to. I'm practically sure of it. I haven't seen this anywhere else, and to be clear, I'm basically making it up, but I think I'm right. The faster RAM works towards that. M5 has much faster RAM. The inexplicably faster GPU, but only in the realm of AI GPU related tasks, works towards that. Sorry, I've mentioned that twice now, but haven't shown it yet. Let's jump into that. So setting LM Studio aside for a moment, this other program called Draw Things is like a bootstrapper for image generation models that can run locally on your machine. And I know I'm using that term inaccurately if you're a developer, but you know what I mean. And basically I had made a whole video about this just a couple of days ago when I started the research to compare these two computers more generally. And I stumbled onto this odd thing where I was sure I just had the settings messed up somewhere on the M5. But in this Draw Things app, you may have heard of Stable Diffusion, which is like on-device image generation. That's on there. You can load that through Draw Things. I was messing around with this model called Quen 1.0 because it makes really good pictures. And when I loaded onto both computers, being careful to make sure that all the settings are the same number of steps, same model, same size for the output, and I pasted the same prompt into both of them. And here's where those neural accelerators on each GPU get to really shine. Clearly they're made for specifically however you describe this type of work, because look what's happening here. M5 took 6 minutes and 41 seconds to create this man chiseling a giant donut out of marble. M4 took 18 minutes and 44 seconds to produce virtually the same picture. That's a tripling, 300% faster. 300% as fast? Nothing ever, I don't think ever, not even from Intel to M1, nothing has had a 300% speed boost in one generation. And I may be wrong about that, fact check me. Siri's getting an upgrade. My guess is there's gonna be a cloud version and an on-device version for a while. The on-device version will only run on M5 and above, so they can slowly phase out the cloud version that probably runs on Amazon servers or OpenAI servers or somewhere like that. Anyway, next up we have Final Cut Pro. If you're a video editor like me and you don't care at all about AI image generation, well, you won't really notice a difference between these two computers at all. You can see it if you open up a complex video project and stare at the metrics while you have it play through, but neither one stutters when editing video. Neither one holds me back when editing video. The M5 doesn't have to work quite as hard when doing the same things. You can measure it if you pull out a stopwatch and use the magnetic mask tool on a long clip. I had Final Cut Pro cut me out of a 1-minute video on both computers side by side. The M5 could do this in 1 minute and 7 seconds. The M4 took 1 minute and 21 seconds. So if you're someone who uses this tool a lot for entire durations of a video, you'll save about 14 seconds per 1 minute of video. So that's about 20% faster. I think 20% faster is kind of the theme for these two computers. But importantly, with the act of video editing itself, I noticed no difference. Remember, I made the confident claim that the M4 Air is powerful enough to be my full-time video editing rig. So when we're talking about videos that look like this, when we're talking about my type of videos, you gain nothing by switching to M5. Well, maybe if you make very long videos. The encoder has been updated finally after 3 generations of having the same one. And the encoder engine, Apple's media engine, is what does the majority of the export on your Final Cut Pro videos. The GPUs really only render titles and effects and color grading, but they can keep up with the encoder for most of that. They can do it all in real time. So it's the speed of the encoder that actually determines the speed of the export. And it's not until the Max chips, this is the M4 Max, that you get 2 encoders in one computer working in tandem. So they're a lot faster than the base and the Pro versions of the M4 chip. And that was true for M1 through M4. Anyway, I exported my iPhone 16 versus 17 video with both computers side by side. Ooh. Smoke machine turned back on. It's a 17-minute video shot in 2 angles of 4K with lots of titles and B-roll and overlays. A perfect example of a tech YouTube channel offering. I exported these into H.264. Gerald Undone says YouTube treats this format slightly better than it treats the more compressed H.265. The M4 MacBook Pro finished this 17-minute export in 7 minutes and 22 seconds. The M5 finished this export in 6 minutes and 8 seconds. Would you look at that? About 17% faster. So there's an argument argument to be made that if you create like 2-hour-long podcasts and you're using 3 different camera angles, and exporting is actually a pretty long wait, M5 will slash that wait by, if I did my math correctly, 4.5 minutes of export time per 1 hour of video length. The M4 MacBook Pro should export a 1-hour video in about 25 minutes. The M5 should do a 1-hour-long video export in about 20.5 minutes. The Lightroom export test. This serves as not only a test of the CPU and GPU speed, but also a thermal throttling test. Because this is one of the only real-world tests that I've found to do that will max out the CPU and GPU to 100% and hold them there until it's done. And running everything at full power consistently produces more heat than any laptop can realistically pump out. It also has to read and write tons of data during the process, so I'm not exactly sure how much the SSD speed boost plays into these results. I loaded up 1,236 raw images onto both computers. These are 35 megapixel photos from my Sony a7 IV, and they're being compressed into JPEGs. M4 on your right side, M5 on your left side. And right out the gate, the M5 is given its SoC 40 watts. M4 only gets 30 watts. But both computers quickly throttle down. M4 to a little over 20 watts, M5 to a little under 30 watts for the duration. And it's kind of the same story for the CPU clock speed. Initially, the M4 is running at about 4 gigahertz, M5 running at about 4.5 gigahertz. And as they heat up, they settle down to where the M4 is running at about 2.6 gigahertz. M5 still cooking at 3.7. That's a huge improvement. I wonder if there's more copper in there. I did do a quick thermal camera shot, and it's really clear that the M5 is pumping more heat out the back. That heat trail on my desk is considerably longer, which makes sense. It's pulling more power. More power makes more heat, but it seems to be able to get rid of it. M5 finished at 3 minutes 12 seconds. M4 finished at 4 minutes 23 seconds. So for this test, the M5 is closer to 30% faster on a heavy thermal load. I tested out file compression using that same massive folder in a zip. And yes, the M5 is going a bit faster. We can see what's happening here in the MX Power Gadget app. If I had to guess, it looks like file compression is a single core operation. So the speed of this comes down simply to the speed of one CPU core. On the M4, it's running its CPUs at 4 gigahertz during this process, and on the M5, it's running at 4.34 gigahertz. And it looks like it's about that much faster, 4.34 fourths. It's funny, in all these years, no one ever wrote a multi-core zip program. With 10 cores, it should be able to zip up a folder just about as fast as the SSD can write. Then there are a whole bunch of places when using this new computer where you literally just cannot sense any difference between these two at all. Like, without a stopwatch and a video playback of what just happened, they feel the same. Which is funny, because these are the things that coincide with how I'm guessing almost everyone uses their computer. Mail, Office apps, Safari, Chrome, messaging, video calls. I'll even include Final Cut Pro, AutoCAD, and Photoshop in there. The M4 MacBook Pro, even the base model, is still massively overpowered for productivity apps and a majority of creative stuff. Or at least I should say the way I use them as a guy who makes YouTube videos and edits photos with a day job working at home using Microsoft Office apps. Gaming. M5 seems to have gotten a nice little bump for gaming. I was even able to turn on ray tracing in Cyberpunk 2077, and this guy stayed above 30 frames per second at 1080p. M4 ran that same thing at around 24, 25 frames per second. Both of these were really steady, because in the past, when testing out AAA games on Macs, a few games that ever came out for Mac, frame rates were always just kind of all over the place. And sure, 30 frames per second isn't RTX 5070 land, but when they're not stuttering or dropping frames much, it just reminds me of playing Xbox, and it looks just fine. Clearly not a gaming laptop, but a laptop that you can play games on if you've got a long flight. Well, the 4 AAA games that you actually can play without an emulator. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a tough one for the M4 base model. You have to put the graphics all the way down to low on 1080p to get 30 frames per second. I don't know why I use that as the benchmark of acceptability, probably because I'm in my 40s, and console systems were locked at 30 FPS for the first 30 years of my life. M5 can go all the way up to 1440p on medium settings and stay above 30. For me, 1440p on a studio display is a sweet spot. Once you immerse yourself in going on these little rampages with the big black samurai, you really stop paying attention to frame rates and ray tracing and just start kicking dudes really hard. So there is a very real, albeit expected, like all the other reviewers are saying, about 20% increase in GPU performance. That is until you open up an image generator. These other apps are gonna have to figure out how to harness whatever these neural accelerators are actually doing. So if you're choosing between these two computers, here is my advice as someone who works all day on Mac computers. Also, real quick, if you made it this far into this video, please subscribe to the channel. I want to make this my full-time job, and nobody's sponsoring me. As you can see, I buy every Mac computer. This is super expensive. If saving money is your primary driver, I'm gonna have to assume that since M5 exists now, M4 is gonna start showing up for sale by owner, and it's gonna be cheaper. Or you can probably find one with more RAM and SSD as the same price M5 without those upgrades. You won't regret this choice. Yes, this one has a crazy spec for one specific thing, but it's the first generation of that thing, and practically nothing has harnessed it yet. If price is not your motivation, get the M5. It's objectively a better computer in every single way, even if it's only 15 to 20%. Similarly, with the money thing, 16 gigabytes of RAM is still enough today for your computer to do everything you want it to do. RAM compression is incredible on these, and 16 gigabytes now does about what 32 gigabytes used to do on Intel Macs in 2019. More RAM will be your biggest hedge for future-proofing, and especially if I'm right about this on-device Siri GPT thing. More RAM is more better. You can trust me. I have a brain on my head. This is my last day with my M4 MacBook Pro. I just got the return box in the mail today. So goodbye, MacBook Pro, and goodbye, viewer. Hello, Dunkin' Donuts.